All right. So in this segment, we're going to talk to you about what if China does end up invading Taiwan. Now, I'm not going to get into the military strategy or tactics part of that subject because Rob would run circles around me. So I don't want to encroach on his expertise. I'm just going to talk to you about the potential economic consequences of that event. What would happen if China did invade Taiwan, and why should you care? Okay, so this is why you should care. So I'm going to start with a couple of clips. They're very short, so bear with me. And it will. Let's see, where did it go here, Rob? All right.
Even though it's tiny, this is actually the 16th largest trading economy in the world. And a research group have estimated that a war here would impact $2 trillion worth of economic activity, and that's before any secondary effects like sanctions. Taiwan manufactures 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductor chips. If there was any disruption to places like this, to factories like this that manufacture the key compounds, it would be economically catastrophic.
If you think about it, chips are in almost everything we use that has an on-off switch. I've seen articles or references where they say that a typical person in the States or Western Europe probably has several hundred encounters a day with devices that have chips. And it's everything we make, and it's industries kind of across the board. So there isn't enough capacity anywhere else in the world to make up if that 65% were somehow shut down or interrupted.
Let's say if Apple decides to find another partner, it will take years for them to get this other chip maker to be ready, if at all. So without TSMC, you will not be able to have chips in your iPhones, and you will not have chips for your F-35 fighter jets that the US flies. So it will be a very different world we are talking about without TSMC in it.
This choke point came to light during the pandemic when a chip shortage cost the auto industry billions of dollars.
Okay, so during my research, one of the numbers I came across was a very stark one. But all the numbers that came across during my research for this segment, all the numbers are big. They're huge. Well, the most stark number to me is the statistic that the woman referenced there, that it's estimated that about $2 trillion worth of commerce would be lost in the first year. The analysis that I found said that if we lost the flow of semiconductors from Taiwan and China, by the way, because if we put sanctions on Taiwan, or if we put sanctions on China, chips aren't going to come out of China either. Anyway, the reduction in GDP in the United States in the first year would be 9%. Now, to put that in perspective, the loss of GDP during the first year of the Great Depression was 7.5%. And that is not even including all of those container ships that will come across the pond to put stuff on the Walmart shelves. Okay, I'm just talking about the semiconductor industry. So if China were to invade Taiwan, well, look, whether there's a shooting war or not, I can pretty much guarantee that we are going to put sanctions on China. Okay, and maybe China doesn't actually invade Taiwan. Maybe they just put a blockade around it. Who knows? But if the net effect is that semiconductor chips are not coming out of Taiwan, we're in a different world. Life is going to change. Rob, let me bring you in here. Let me ask you: Have you upgraded your iPhone yet?
I actually have.
There you go.
Danielle's phone died, and I had to upgrade her phone. And in the process, however the numbers worked, it seemed cheaper for me to have a brand new phone than stay with the old one that I had, because I had a deal. I had a really good deal on. So I ended up, I'm not an iPhone user. I'm a Samsung phone user or a Google phone, right? So, but the thing is, the chip comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
What I would encourage listeners and viewers to do is to go away and find a couple of YouTube videos. I might be able to find them for you. I'll link them in the description below. But go away and find out how they make these semiconductors. It is freaking incredible what they do. And what they do in these factories is just like the science and the material engineering that they have. Everything has to happen on site. And that's why these things are so important. You know, if you think of a supply chain, like think of all the equipment that we're using right now. You know, I've got headphones in my ears. You've got headphones on your ears. We've got a screen. We've got a microphone. We've got a webcam. We've got this software and technology. None of the gear that I've got here on my desk all came from the one place. The only thing that came from the one place is the semiconductors in the computers that we're using. Everything else came, there's bits and pieces from everywhere. Somebody 3D printed that. Somebody manufactured that. It was shipped here. It was shipped there. And that's the globalized world that we live in, that interconnected world that we live in. And the reason that that actually works is because the cost of transport is so low, because the cost of shipping around the world is so low. So we can afford to import huge swaths of materials from overseas, from whatever country, and assemble them in one place. We don't have to manufacture anything. If you look at something, you know, in that report, as kind of like a little jab at me, I feel like, you know, she says that F-35 that you're flying, you're not going to fly that any longer.
I purposely left that in for you.
Yeah. So, you know, and I kind of sniggered when I saw that. It's like, yeah, you won't fly it. And that's actually a really good way to shut down the Western Air Forces. No more bits and pieces or parts that you need to actually maintain those things. You better well have your supply chains squared away.
Well, we had a little taste of it, you know, a couple of years ago when the car industry ground to a halt because they couldn't get chips
to a halt, stopped. Yeah,
that's right. Billions of dollars lost. Listen, modern civilization is built on semiconductor chips, right? You know, listen, when we put sanctions on Russia, yeah, there are a few things that we felt. You know, and Russia and Ukraine are the largest providers of fertilizer in the world. You know, so that did affect farmers, and our cost of food has gone up, and is probably going to stay up for a while. Russia is the largest producer of uranium that we need for our nuclear power plants. You know, so we do feel the effects, but the average person is not. That's nothing compared to what they're going to feel if semiconductor chips are cut off from Taiwan. That is going to affect our daily lives in a much more dramatic way.
It definitely is, and we're seeing that play out with the Russians right now. So we know that the Russians they've chewed through their missile supplies, their caliber cruise missile supplies. They've fired the vast majority of what they have, and they have more than enough materials in country to put these things back together. We've also seen them chew through almost their entire armored brigades. There's no more tanks. And they can't rebuild any more tanks because they don't have the bits and pieces that go into the targeting systems. Because the French, Thales, was selling them the bits and pieces that go on the Russian tanks targeting systems. The semiconductor chips that go in the front end of those cruise missiles come out of China and out of Taiwan and out of all these different places. And when you look at so the reason I encourage you to go and look at how semiconductors are built is that there's different flavors of them. And the Taiwanese are the absolute pinnacle of semiconductors. I think the Koreans are number 2, and the Chinese are like number 4 or 5. They're down the bottom. The material science that they use is not quite good enough to weaponize or to use in certain things. You might remember at the start of the war in Ukraine, the Russians were pulling chips out of washing machines to put into missiles because that's what they needed, right? They needed to upgrade those things. So when you think of the military, and the Russians haven't got the self-sustaining ability to actually put that together. So what they did is they went away to their ally in Iran and said, hey, can you give us some drones? Yeah, here's some drones. The drones get shot down, and lo and behold, what's inside of those drones? There's US parts, right? That drone is flying along using what? GPS. GPS is owned by the US. And I thought Iran was a sanctioned country. I thought Russia was a sanctioned country. I thought China was sanctioned and they couldn't sell weapon systems and they couldn't do all those things. And the reality is, yes, they are sanctioned, but for every rule that is placed in there, there's like 50 people going, how can we get around this? What can we do? And they just figure out how to actually do it. But then when you look at it in its totality, you think, is that actually being deliberately allowed? don't worry about it. Let the Iranians have those chips. How many have they got? They got a couple of thousands, a few thousand drones. Yeah, whatever. Who cares? We're never going to go to war with them. And here we are. And we've fed that war machine. We've allowed that to happen. It's just absolute madness. It's maddening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, look, circling back to the economic consequences of this. Listen, if our GDP ends up taking that kind of a hit, we could very well see ourselves in a Great Depression scenario.
I think in your defense there a little bit, Ed, in America, they're building those semiconductor plants that they have in Taiwan. And they're doing that in Arizona and stuff.
I knew you were going to bring that up because you brought that up before. That's why I added that little end of the clip there where the gentleman was talking about how long it takes for these
years
to come. Yeah, it takes years to come on. So that's one of the reasons why I'm thinking China is doing that mental calculus. Well, if we're going to do the most amount of damage, we got to hustle because they're building chip factories right now. They've broken ground. So we got to get, if we want maximum effect of this, we've got to do it sooner. Between that and the election cycle, I think it'll,
our entire economy and our way of life is going to be destroyed because of the freaking election cycle.
Yeah. But the reason why I wanted to do this segment is to make people aware, that hey, I'm not predicting it's going to happen. I think it is going to happen. I'll take that back. I am going to predict that it is going to happen in some form. But when the day that you wake up and you hear the news, all hell is going to break loose, economically speaking. So you need to be aware that this could happen, and that the economic effects are going to be very dramatic, and it will affect your life. So reduce your exposure to your bank, put some of the money into gold and silver, and establish streams of passive recurring income. Get your financial house in order, because if you wait for that big news event to come across the screen before you do anything, it's too late. So you got to get on it now. That's why I wanted to bring this up, and I'll end on this little segment. So I saw this news. This news came out today. The planned arms industry trip to Taiwan comes as the U.S. is looking to ramp up arms sales and general military cooperation with Taiwan, which will further exacerbate tensions with Taiwan. So what happened? So there is apparently a group of contractors heading to Taiwan. Raytheon, General Dynamics. Hey, what can we do to help? Of course, no strings attached, right? No, we'll just give you everything for free. No, there's a lot of money to be made on this upcoming war. And so all these contractors are on this little junket to Taiwan to say, hey, what do you need? You want a cruise missile? You want so I just wanted to point out that there's money to be made in these wars.